Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of Southern Woods and Waters. Hope you're all having a great Thursday evening in with your family and friends. And as y'all can see here in front of me tonight, Dayton's giving me a hard time already. I've been grinning like a possum for about 30 minutes,
I can move that if you need me to.
I am surrounded tonight by large antlers, okay? I'm not talking about just nice bucks. I'm talking about world-class deer. And we stood out there and held them just a little bit in the parking lot, and it was unbelievable. But guys, let me introduce what we're going to be doing tonight. I'm joined tonight by Jay Fish, and Jay has got this collection of deer that you wouldn't believe. And actually, if you guys want to come and see it for yourself, you can come this weekend and see them down at the rendezvous at the fairgrounds.
That's right.
But Jay, first off, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. You've traveled all the way down and even had some trouble with your truck. You having to get your truck worked on. Here we are, and you're in town for the expo.
Yep.
And you have brought all these deer here with us tonight, and I'm looking forward to getting into some of the different ones that you brought with you. But just kind of as an overview, what is it that you do? How is it that you have all these deer and you travel around and you do different things with them? But what is the background on that?
Background is I started doing taxidermy work about 30 years ago. And I had a gentleman stop by my studio, and he was going to build a whitetail museum in central Wisconsin, and asked if I would like to buy some deer antlers for him and help him with his museum. Unfortunately, before he'd seen it through fruition, he ended up passing away of cancer. Well, I had already kind of got my name out there about being an antler buyer, and the phone kept ringing, and so I started buying on my own and collecting and buying, selling. I've sold a lot of antler to Cabela's stores. I sold a lot to a gentleman in Palm Springs, California named Bob Howard. He is the heir of this, if you ever heard of the movie Seabiscuit, he's the grandfather of the Seabiscuit money, and got to be really good friends with him. And as I was buying and selling and making a few bucks, I was able to pull some back. And my dream was I'd always wanted to hit the road and put these deer in people's hands. I mean, you can look at deer up on the walls, you can see them from 20 feet away, but when you wrap your hands around main beams like this, it just brings smiles.
It's unbelievable. It's unreal. It's honest to goodness, I have held no telling how many sets of antlers, and it absolutely blew my mind. I mean, just holding not only this set, but some of these others that we have here that we're going to be showing. Yeah. So you started building your collection, and then when did you start traveling around with it, kind of? Because I know you've been doing that for a little while now.
About 15 years. A friend of mine started doing some replicas, and I'd bring my originals with him. And just to show, the difference between the replica and the real antler, and how close these replicas can be to the originals. And like I said, then one day a friend of mine called me back in Wisconsin and told me about this Johnny King buck. And I looked it up online, and the only picture was it was in a box on the floor of a taxidermy studio. I'm like, yeah, it looks like a big deer, but no world record. Right. Well, then I got to see it in person. It just blew me away. Then I got to meet Johnny King, and he blew me away as a person more than a deer.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a great man.
Yeah, and the story, and you're going to get into the whole story tonight too, and we're going to get to show something really interesting with these antlers behind the story. But so you meet up with him. When did you realize what you had? I mean, when did you realize what he had, or however you want to say it? Like, when did you say, I think this might be a potential world record?
We were at the Madison, Wisconsin Deer and Turkey Expo, and Johnny King approached us, and I'd never met him before, and he introduced himself, and I asked him where the deer was, and he said that it was in the building. It was up in the big buck contest up on the second floor of the building. And so I went up there and I asked him, whatever happened to it. He said, well, it went from a potential 218 and 4/8 net typical world record. They dropped it to a 180-inch deer because they called it a shorter point, non-typical. And I said, can we go look at it? And I looked at it, and from 5 feet away, I said, that deer is not being treated fair. I said, that's 100% typical. It's just shorter. That's why you have the side-to-side deduction.
That's right.
And you take the side-to-side deduction off, you subtract that from the gross score, and you move on. I mean, there's no deer in the world like it. None.
It's huge. What does it weigh? Do you know what the weight is?
The antlers, we weighed them probably 6 months after it was killed, so it lost a little weight, but it's just shy of 11 pounds, just the antlers alone. The body of the deer Johnny, they're old farmers. You know, they didn't weigh deer, but they had a really nice 8-pointer hanging next to it. That was a big body deer. And the king buck, he showed me pictures, was 2.5 feet longer, the body on it was. So I'm thinking it was well over 200-pound buck, you know. It was aged at 5.5 years old. And the funny thing is, I still have the jawbone out of it from when it was aged. And I've got a set of sheds off of him from the year before. He scored 202. So it was a straight up typical whitetail. At 4.5 years old, he was 202. At 5.5 years old, he's 225 and 6/8 gross and 218 and 4/8 net. Depending on who you talk to, and it's never been done in the history of whitetails.
Right. Now, and we hadn't hit on this yet. Where was this at? Where did the king buck come from?
It came from Grant County, Wisconsin, which is probably about 40 miles west of Madison, Wisconsin, more southwest corner.
Okay, I'm guessing probably crop area.
Rolling hills, yep, coulees, lots of farmland. Johnny and his family had no idea that deer even existed.
Really? So
first time he saw it's the day he shot it.
Really?
Yep.
That's about right, though. I mean, a lot of people that have places to hunt, that go spend time, you got your camera set out. You never see that deer till that time.
All of a sudden he shows
there
up.
It is.
I can only
Gray
imagine, you know, I can only imagine the surprise then when he saw this deer come out.
Yeah, it was funny. They did a deer drive, and nothing. They didn't see anything, so they would go meet back at the barn, make a plan for their next deer drive, and they get to a real thicket, and Johnny was in the back of the truck, and his brother goes, "Why don't you go post with," they call their uncle, like, "why don't you go post with Uncle?" Johnny's like, "I've never posted before. I'm one of the younger guys." His brother says, "That's why you're going to post this time, because you never get to sit." Well, he sets his uncle up on an old fence post, and Johnny goes down about 70 yards past him, and he's leaning against a fence post, watching up this hill. And as the trucks just get out of sight, before they get up to even start making the drive, Johnny sees some movement over his right shoulder. He turns to look, and there's the king buck with 3 does. Well, it wasn't the king buck then, but shortly it became it. But
he made it the king buck.
Exactly. So the deer runs past between him and his uncle, and then right out in front of Johnny's uncle. It jumps the fence, and Johnny's trying to get his uncle's attention. His uncle's, you know, in his 70s, and Johnny to this day says his uncle fell asleep in the sunshine against that fence post. So he started going, "Uncle, Uncle." Finally, he just yelled, "Uncle," in front of you, and his uncle let one drive about 2 miles over the deer's back. He just fired, you know, and the deer ran in front of Johnny, and he rested on his knee and put the first shot into him.
And now he was something with an old 30-30.
Yep.
An old bolt action 30-30 that I think had been handed down or something like that. So open sights.
Yep, open sights.
Which a lot of drives, you know, that's not something we hear a lot about here in the state of Tennessee, but a lot of places up north in areas where there's a lot of cropland and open area, deer drives are part of it. You know, they do it. It's just part of life there.
Yep.
And it's a big deal, as a matter of fact. It's a big get together, and everybody does their thing. I mean, I know we're going to have to move them here in a little while. I'm going to have to get a taller chair, ain't I? It's so he shoots the deer, and I know he shot a couple of times, and we're going to get to show y'all this here in a little while, but these are not replicas, and we can guarantee that because there's a hole in the back of these antlers where he actually, one of his shots hit the deer in the antlers.
Yep.
So he gets him down, gets over there to him, and then I assume at that point he knew it was a huge deer. I don't guess he knew at all what he had at that point.
He had never had a deer scored. As a matter of fact, his cousin got to the deer first. And Johnny died up on a knoll, and Johnny was coming up from the bottom, and his cousin gets there and he yells out, "Johnny, you shot a monster." And Johnny's coming up the hill, and his cousin straddles the deer and grabs it by the antlers and goes, "Look you shot a monster." The deer jumps up and bucks, throws his cousin off of him, and this antler is in his hand. And the deer runs away with one antler on its head. And Johnny's yelling, "You broke my buck, you broke my buck." And the deer stopped about 15, 20 yards out in front and tipped over for good. But there was a rule passed in a scoring system in the mid-90s that if an antler is broke or a tine is broke and you can fit it right back together and it wouldn't affect the score, they will score it and allow it, which what they ruled on the king buck. It fit together like a doll would.
Right. Right, absolutely. Well, we're going to keep moving on to this story as we go through the night. I mean, this is just unreal. But, guys, let's go on over right now and do this week's wild game forecast. This week's wild game forecast is being sponsored by our friends over at Wilson Bank and Trust. You guys can stop in at 1 in 29 Middle Tennessee locations. Let them take care of all your banking and financial needs, and be sure to tell them thank you for all they do for us right here at the show. All right, guys. Well, it's a pretty warm forecast coming up, Dayton. It's gonna be. It's been getting pretty hot, and these fish, we've been getting a lot of questions about what they're doing, and for the most part, like you told me earlier, you still got your catfish and your gar and stuff, but most of the fish have come in.
You're
done their thing.
A lot of your bass are gone. Walleye may be biting a little bit. Sauger maybe a little bit. Catfish are just fixing to spawn.
Yeah.
But, I mean, bluegill are spawning and shell crackers are still spawning. I'm not saying you can't go catch some.
Yeah. But it's just
kind of slowing down, and, you know, the weather's getting warmer, and they'll start easing on back out, and then, you know, minnows will start coming to the top, and you catch fish in the jump, surfing.
Yeah. Top
night
water
fishing.
right now is getting one of my favorite time of the year to bass fish, and that's because top water's starting to turn on, especially early in the morning, late in the evening. They're really starting to crash the top of the water.
And like shad spawn at Dale Hollow with Bobby Gentry, or anywhere the shad spawn's going.
Yeah, Bobby, I know you're watching tonight. Go in and give us a call. We'll get set up. We need to be up here in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, so. I mean, we got to hurry up with it.
We need to hurry up and get going. Guys, we want to also remind you to follow us on Facebook and keep up with us there. We're going to be giving y'all updates this weekend from the Rendezvous. So y'all want to be sure to do that. You can also share your own stories with pictures and videos with us. Also find us at swwtv.com. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with this week's Pictures of the Week and some more Southern Woods and Waters.